Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I got some spoilers for you. That's right. Sort of under the radar spoilers that people probably didn't know were coming out, and I wasn't going to talk about them except for the fact that they are legendary creatures, so of course they can be commanders, so I thought it was worth talking about. It is from Game Night 2022, and I've talked about the Game Night a little bit on my channel. There are cards that have come out from previous Game Night set. I mentioned a lot of them on my 10 card series because they do very much lean towards multiplayer formats. A lot of the cards from those sets are pretty good, and a lot of people don't know they exist because these sets sort of fly under the radar. So I did mention a lot of them on my 10 cards videos. It might behoove you to go and look back at some of the earlier Game Night sets because a lot of those cards are really great in the Commander format. In this one, they actually printed legendary creatures, so I thought I would talk about them. They got one of each mono color. So the first one, Zamriel, Seraph of Steel, 2 white, legendary creature angel, 3/4 with flying. As long as it's your turn, equipped creatures you control have indestructible. That's very interesting. I know this doesn't seem like much because you're in a mono white equipment theme, and obviously there's so many great equipment commanders out there. This doesn't seem like a great one to go after. However, this to me is a combination equipment theme and Avacyn deck, right? And the reason why is because on your turn, all your equipped creatures are going to have indestructible, so it's going to be very easy for you to be board wiping over and over again, destroying all your opponent's creatures, and yours will be just fine, sort of like what an Avacyn deck does a little bit. Maybe that sounds a little annoying to people, but anyone who likes an Avacyn deck, this is sort of another option. Just a different avenue you can go with that sort of theme. I mean, your creatures also just having indestructible means you don't have to worry about attacking, right? You can just attack all you want, throw your creatures at your opponents, don't have to worry about them dying. That can be another great thing about having those indestructible creatures on your turn. Of course, you want to equip your commander as well so that any board wipe or anything like that isn't going to affect your commander. You won't need to be putting a Darksteel Plate in this deck probably because your commander's already doing that. It's a pretty interesting one. I kind of like it. Moving on to our mono blue one, Maeve Insidious Stinger, 2 blue, legendary creature, Siren, 3/4. Pay 2 and a blue, gold target creature. Whenever that creature attacks one of your opponents this turn, you draw a card. That's very interesting. So we're in a mono blue gold theme, and you know, they have been doing the gold thing a lot in all different color combinations. Now we got a mono blue version. However, whenever that creature attacks one of your opponents, you get to draw. That seems pretty darn good. A lot of ways you can go with that. Drawing cards is always good, but you can build around this where you have the if you draw a card effects, right? Whenever you have a commander that is drawing you cards, any of those, when you draw a card or if you draw your second card each turn, those will work really, really well. Obviously, the second card each turn means you'll have to goad more than one creature in order to get the second card draw on your opponent's turn, more than likely. But that probably won't be difficult because you will be doing it a lot. Training Grounds is obviously going to be the best card in this deck because you can just pay 1 blue mana to goad those creatures, and then you can really go nuts. The red version, Nogi Draco Zealot, 1 red, Goblin Shaman, 3/3. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, so we're in a mono red dragon theme, and of course it's interesting because your commander's not a dragon, but making your dragons cost less, of course. Whenever Nogi Draco Zealot attacks, if you control 3 or more dragons until end of turn, Nogi becomes a dragon with base power and toughness 5/5 and gains flying. Wow, that's very interesting. So when he attacks, if you control 3 or more dragons, your commander is going to turn into a dragon, and it's going to be a 5/5 with flying. That's very interesting. I don't know if this is a fantastic dragon commander. It's not really. I like the flavor here, though. That's the interesting part about this, the fact that your commander is turning into a dragon when it attacks and flying over and doing 5 damage. That to me is the interesting part here. If you want to kind of tackle this guy, have a different option for Dragon Tribal. Speaking of different options for those tribal decks, we got Ilmaril Elfame Elite, 2 green elf warrior, 3/3. Whenever Ilmari Elfame Elite attacks, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of other elves you control. So of course we're in a tribal elf theme, and we all know there's a lot of really busted mono green elf commanders out there. However, this is just another interesting option if you don't want to do what everyone else is doing. This last ability is actually pretty good. You may have Ilmaril assign its combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So pretty fantastic Voltron commander in an elf theme, which is pretty interesting. So you can just have a bunch of token elves lying around. Say you got 5 of them. You attack with your commander. It gets +5/+5 until end of turn. So now it's an 8/8, assuming you have no other stuff going on there. And when it becomes blocked, you get in for damage, right? You probably don't have to worry about your commander dying at all. Unless your opponent has a creature with power 8 or more, they can chump block you all they want, but all of your damage is going to get through because you can assign that combat damage as though it weren't blocked. This really is pretty darn good for a Voltron commander. And of course, it's going to be really easy for you to fill your board with lots of little elves, whether it be tokens or mana dorks or whatever. So it's going to be pretty easy for you to get this ability out of hand pretty darn fast. Definitely an interesting one. Our last one today is the mono black option, Vogar Necropolis Tyrant. 3 black zombie giant 4/4 with menace. Whenever another creature dies during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Vogar Necropolis Tyrant. When Vogar dies, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. I think this is probably my favorite of the bunch, or at least the one that has the most options for building around. Whenever another creature dies during your turn, a lot of ways to do that, obviously. You probably will be in a sacrifice theme, whether it be I want to use a vampiric rights to sacrifice my token creatures or whatever, or you just have creatures that have sacrifice abilities on them. If you're in that theme, you probably will also want to do a little bit of a reanimation theme so that you can be getting those creatures back. Having a creature die during your turn, of course, is the easiest thing in the world, and then you're going to get that +1/+1 counter on your commander, which means you're in a +1/+1 counter theme, and there's a lot you can do there. I will direct you to my Parage of Urborg deck that I did on my Underwhelming Commanders video, which did a mono black +1/+1 counter theme. There's actually a lot of support there, surprisingly. So if you're interested in this guy, go visit that one. There's a lot of cards I mentioned there that will fit in a mono black +1/+1 counter theme. And then on top of that, when your commander dies, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. That's fantastic. It's always nice to have that added bonus if, okay, I got this big Voltron commander that I'm going to be swinging with. My opponents are going to try to kill it, but if they do, oh well, I get a ton of card draw. That's pretty fantastic. Of course, you're going to need the sack outlets again, even though you're probably already going to have them in the deck anyway. You got to make sure your commander dies, right? If someone wants to Swords to Plowshares your commander, you're not going to get the dies trigger because it's getting exiled. So you got to make sure you have that high market or whatever other sack outlet ready to go just in case your opponent attempts to exile or bounce your commander, because you have to make sure it dies, right? There's a few interesting ones here. They are monocolored, and typically people don't go after those monocolored commanders. However, it's kind of neat. I thought I would talk about them. They decided to go with legendary creatures in this game night set, so I thought it would be worth giving it a mention, mostly because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that didn't even know these existed, and now there's some options for you. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.